Hello, and welcome to our AFCEA Solutions webinar series. I'm George Seifers, Editor-in-Chief of Signal Magazine. AFCEA Solutions brings the expertise of AFCEA leaders and association partners directly to an online audience, allowing for knowledge sharing and helping AFCEA provide a forum for discussion and the dissemination of educational material for current and future technology needs. The opinions expressed in this webinar are those of the presenters and are not to be construed as official or reflecting the views of AFCEA International. Today, we will address some of the challenges federal employees and military members face when transitioning to the private sector, strategies for overcoming those challenges, and how AFCEA's Career Center may be able to help. Our subject matter experts are Patrick Johnson, Director of the Workforce Innovation Division within the Office of the DOD CIO, Tom Weinert, founder of Mount Indy, a talent recruitment firm focusing specifically on meeting federal and defense workforce needs, and AFCEA's own Nancy Hilliard, Director of Corporate Membership for AFCEA International. This discussion will be in the form of a Q&A, so viewers are welcome to submit questions throughout the presentation using the Ask a Question button. And with that, it's time to jump in. Patrick, we'll start with you and just kind of work our way around. How many DoD employees tend to transition to industry?
Yeah, George, that's a really good question. In a normal year, and I am responsible for the cyber functional community within the department, that is about 155,000 individuals, military and civilian. We lose about 10,000 in turnover. And those cyber professionals disperse out, sometimes to other federal agencies, but a high percentage go into industry. And traditionally, we've not looked at that as a bad thing. Letting these people go, we consider that we are doing our part in terms of providing supply to an area where there is a shortage nationally when we talk about that technical area. This time around, and I'll just acknowledge the elephant in the room, there are different things happening. So I expect that number to go up. We track it very closely. We're beginning to see some of those impacts, but it'll take some time with a delayed resignation program. Those people don't necessarily drop off the books to a certain point. So we're looking very closely at those numbers.
Great, thank you, Patrick. And Tom, what do you think are some of the biggest hurdles that transitioning folks deal with when entering the public or private sector?
Yeah, I think that this is either military transition or people transitioning currently with, the current situation. So the government contracting industry, I'll speak about, we work hand in hand with our government counterparts. However, even though you may be sitting next to somebody in a cubicle, the environments are very, very different as far as from a corporate standpoint. And I'll speak to military transition. One of the things that can be very difficult is the lack of, I'll just say, chain of command for on our side, on the government contracting side. There's a lot less rigid environment, a lot less rules in regards to what to do on a day-to-day basis, and a lot of kind of looking for people to get up and go and do things with limited direction. Especially for military transition, we've seen that to be a hurdle. It's not a deal breaker by any means, but it's something that I think takes a little bit different of a mindset to go into those corporate environments where there may be a little bit less structure as far as what's expected on a day-to-day basis, and kind of wipe off the world where it's a little bit more structured. So that's the biggest thing that we see for transition purpose. And for a career federal employee, that could be very similar as well. It's just a different way of doing business. And, for the career federal employees that are moving to industry, the way we work is totally different. Your companies are very much, obviously still dedicated to the mission, but at the end of the day, they're revenue-based organizations that are doing things to drive revenue. And the reason why I point that out is because many times, you'll wear a lot of different hats that you may not be used to from your federal employment. And that could be, being a technical SME on a proposal, or, doing a little bit of after hours work on some business development activities or, different reports, things of that nature. But generally speaking, it's that environment transition that we see as being the first immediate hurdle.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Nancy, what can you tell us about the AFCEA Career Center and some of the tools that people might be able to find there?
Thank you, George. So the AFCEA Career Center is a tool for members and non-members to help them people navigate a career change within the AFCEA network community. They can use it a couple different ways. If they go into the AFCEA Career Center, they can find it from going to the AFCEA website under the membership tab. It's located right under there. It says AFCEA Career Center. So they can just browse jobs, browse featured jobs that are on the list. Just look around, see what they think. Or they can get more, try to use it even further by searching under keywords or job titles that they are looking at. And they can also set up a search alert. So when new jobs get posted on the Career Center, it can alert them that there's jobs that are coming into the Career Center based on their search keywords or search job titles. In addition to that, they can let employers find them. They can post a resume, they can create a profile within the Career Center, and that resume database is searched by potential employers looking for individuals with skill sets, and their resume might come into be found by a potential employer. In addition to that, there are articles in the Career Center to help people build a personal brand within LinkedIn, help give them interviewing tips, help them with resume and cover letter guidance. It's a good way for them to just look at kind of some updated ways people are looking for jobs if they haven't looked for a job in many years. Just kind of self-educate them on some tips and give them some ideas on how to navigate this transition.
Okay, great. Patrick, over to you. What are some things that the industry is doing well right now that the federal government might be able to learn from?
Right now, industry is doing what I'd say three things well. Two of the things they've always done it well. The third thing is kind of exciting for me, and I'm a little bit envious because we're running behind. So first, obviously, the time to hire and ingest talent. All right, industry moves decisively. Tom, you talked about it. At the end of the day, we have partners, and we look at our industry partners as integral to the cyber workforce. And when we include them, that takes our workforce up to about 225,000 people. They're there for the mission and to support the mission, but at the end of the day, they're about making money. All right. So they move with purpose. When they identify talent, they rapidly ingest that talent, and it takes them from contact to a butt in the seat about 45 days. That's an industry average. Compare that to the department, and even when we're running fast, we're happy if we can get that under 80 days or at 80 days. So that's one thing. Then when they onboard an employee, right, when you show up for work, you have your place, you have your equipment, you're introduced to your team members. By day two, you're off and running, right? There's other things that are part of the culture that have to go through, but you don't spend 2 or 3 weeks, sitting around waiting to get access to the drives or get your additional security access here. It's all taken care of. And so those aspects of industry, and, Tom, you're talking about people coming from the government, they're used to changing positions and sometimes taking 3 weeks to a month to actually get up to speed and actually start producing things. Industry can't do that, and they don't do that. Day one, you're ready to go. And then the third thing is the integration of AI capabilities is starting to show up all throughout the industry. I've been surprised at how rapidly they're starting to look at and automate processes. And when I say it's one thing to, build a bot or do something, but actually integrate AI into what I call the plumbing. Here's our process. It's built around that. And it is becoming integral to what they do. Now, that has an impact on the number of people they may need for a particular task. We could talk about that later. But it's very impressive to see how they're using AI along with their workforce to maximize capability and stretch things, make it go farther, do more.
Okay, great. Tom, what should people look for when they're choosing a recruiter?
Yeah, I love this question. So if you're entering the workforce right now and you've got a clearance, you've done your refresher trainings, I'm sure. You've been told a lot of times to be very, very careful who you speak to in regards to the work that you do and anything related to your clearance. So let me just say one thing. Recruiters are going to ask you for your social security number, and that's going to be like, oh my God, what's going on here? It's just to check your clearance, and it's usually done in a secure fashion. But what you should look for are transparent people. So here's how I try to train my team. We have connectivity to programs, and you need to make sure you're getting that across to your clients, or to your candidates, that you have a legitimate opportunity. So you want to make sure the people that you're speaking to have legitimate connections to the companies that they're hiring for, that they have the ability to hire you. This is something that's really big right now. The cleared market is incredible high demand. We're always trying to find people, and if you put your resume up on something like clearancejobs.com, you are going to get a ton of phone calls from recruiters trying to hire you. So my advice is definitely, vet them out a little bit. Make sure that they're reputable. Obviously, if they're from one of the big firms, they're reputable. But if you can't tell how big the company is that the recruiter works for, it's just asking those questions, asking questions about the program that you'll be supporting for the job, asking questions about, the hiring team and the process. I really look at it as, everyone has that internal filter, and you'll be able to tell if the person you're speaking to is, legitimate, connected to the program, speaks with some knowledge and authority, and can answer, great questions in regards to the day-to-day operations of those jobs that they're hiring into. So transparency is big. You want a recruiter that's going to be transparent and communicate with you. They're going to be available, and that they are actually legitimate, from legitimate organizations, and have the ability at the end of the day to get you hired.
Okay, great. And just a reminder to our audience, we do want to hear from you, so feel free to submit questions at any point using that ask a question box. Nancy, other than the Career Center, what are some other ways that AFCEA might be able to help?
Great question, George. So there are lots of other ways. So I think one of the biggest strengths of AFCEA are its people, its network. So by utilizing their network within AFCEA, by helping also grow their network, attend different luncheons, breakfasts, dinners, come to one of our events, walk on the exhibit floor, look at different companies that are out there where you might be excited about learning more about a company. Maybe they might have an opportunity that you might fit into, but really utilizing the AFCEA network. And beyond that, we have a lot of great professional development opportunities with continuing education. So they might consider looking at some of the offerings that are going on. Maybe they want to boost their resume. Maybe they want to get a certificate for something that they've been working on to help make them more employable or more attractive to employers. Those are my best advice, but really connecting within the AFCEA community is a great way to network into their next best dream job.
Okay, thank you. Patrick, what do you think it is that draws people from the military or government service over to industry?
It's a combination of things, but first and foremost, generally, salaries are higher. And until recently, government benefits, when you look at, retirement, fixed annuities, TSP contributions, go a long way to kind of helping that. But there is some activity going right now in Congress. They're looking at kind of changing that. So reducing and increasing the amount that federal workers have to pay. So it makes it a little less attractive on the federal side. Also, the opportunity to do something different. Oftentimes our military members, and I encourage both that and civilians, you've been with an organization for how long? If you're not getting the training opportunities or the growth opportunities, we should not be afraid to exit out. I have been in and out of government. A lot of people find that scary. And for anybody that's listening right now and facing, those type of hurdles, Nancy just gave you kind of the key. And then Tom's talking about getting with recruiters, build that network. You have been building a network, all right? Maybe you just haven't been looking at it like that. So an opportunity to do something different where you aren't constrained by a lot of regulation or decision makers who are reluctant to take that next step. You have a lot more freedom. As Tom mentioned, though, a lot of people coming from a very structured environment, that can be a little unsettling. It's when you sat down and said, okay, now what? Here's your project. You go. It's yours. You own it. All right. And we expect good things. You have to produce. You show return on investment. And so it's a different mindset. And a lot of people that transition out, they're looking for that. They're looking for those challenges that they felt they didn't get. Our challenge for our workforce is to say, great, I'm not going to make it hard for you to come back. And we're working on taking those barriers back. I like to see people go out into the industry, gain new skills, and then if we're lucky enough and our relationship and their experience with us, if we have an opportunity to use them somewhere else, that they'll come back. Those are some challenges go on the way, but that's one of the biggest things. It's a completely different rule, as you say, and you are independent. You're moving out. The corporate structure, the corporate world rewards performance. It does not reward longevity. So a lot of people appreciate that it's more of a meritocracy than people think, right? They're looking at what you bring to the table. Something else, when the corporate world hires, they're not just hiring for what you're going to be doing there. They're looking at what your impact will be for the agency over the long haul. I think an employer that's hiring you just for one job, that's short-sighted, and they probably have very high turnover. It's about acquiring a bench and building a deep bench if you have that luxury of what they can bring to the next project and the next project.
Okay, excellent. And I'm being reminded that there will be links to AFCEA's Career Center and to our events calendar to include chapter events. That'll be posted under the resources tab for our viewers. And also, if you're able, you can join us at TechNet Cyber in Baltimore next week.
Definitely encourage that.
Yeah, we've exceeded the number of industry partners from last year, so it'll be a great opportunity for people to drop off their resumes at some of the different booths. And Tom, back over to you. We learned from Nancy that someone can begin with the AFCEA Career Center, but where are some other places for people just to get started?
Yeah, so that's a great, what Nancy said is a great resource. There, there's also the leading job boards, that you'll see out there, clearance jobs, things like that. You obviously see jobs on LinkedIn. But in regards to like getting started, this is why I love this panel, because there's experts on here that have the ability to kind of guide people the right way. There's a ton of bad information online, on LinkedIn about your job search. And I think one of the things that, again, I'm going to go back to the first question a little bit too. One of the things that we struggle with and why it's important to get started this way is the way that government contractors hire. They're regulated by their contracts. So you may say, hey, I don't have 5 years experience. I have 4. I'm great for this role. And the way that the contract is written on our side, on industry side, will prevent us in most cases from hiring you because you're not an exact fit to the requirements that we told the government that we would provide when we won the contract. So there's a lot of questions around that. Like, should I apply to every job even if I don't have a shot? And my answer to that is no. Like, you don't want to burn yourself out. You don't want to apply to a ton of industry jobs that you're not qualified for, that you have no chance of getting hired at, and then just be, bothered with all of this rejection. So when you're looking for jobs, look for something that you're no kidding, an 80, 90% match for. The biggest things that we care about are years of experience, required security clearance, and certification. The certification shows us that you can touch IT systems or what other systems right away. The clearance shows that we won't have to put you in for a clearance and lose 3 months of billable work while we're waiting for you to clear. And the years of experience basically mean that you're qualified, to go into the role that we bid on the contract. So that's my biggest piece of advice is do not listen to all of the noise out there on LinkedIn telling you all of this, all of these myths about hiring, but really understand the way that we hire. And that's exactly what I said. The people that we hire have to fit the labor categories that we're hiring for. Otherwise, we could be audited or worse. So that's something I think a lot of people struggle with in their job searches. They say, I could do this job. And there's no doubt that, yeah, you could probably do the job. But if we hire you, are your qualifications going to pass the sniff test if the company gets audited? So really look for things where you're meeting the required qualifications. Now, the desired qualifications on jobs, those are great. If you got those, awesome. But really just pay attention to those required qualifications that we're saying you have to have in order to get hired into this position. So, again, I just want to stress, we want to hire you. Industry wants to hire you. Like, I would love to hire people that I could, afford a promotion for. That's what we want to do. But a lot of times, because of the way these different contract vehicles work, we're not able to do that. So to save yourself some rejection, really focus on those jobs that you feel like, are no kidding jobs that you qualify for.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tom. We got an excellent question that came in from one of our viewers. Are there any particular jobs in the IT field in the military that show a greater success rate with hiring into industry? From an Army perspective, does a division or corps level job equal better career prospects than a brigade or battalion level job?
I can't answer specifically in regards to the level, but I can tell the career field, right? And it kind of goes back to, if you're in the military and you're getting equivalent certifications through military training. So you didn't get your Security Plus, but you got something that was equivalent. And this is very tricky. You're going to go on the industry side and it's not going to match unless you have a really nice contracting officer who says, I get the equivalency. So pay attention to that. But as far as IT jobs, anything in systems engineering, network engineering, tech, hands-on tech, tech refresh, troubleshooting, software development, but it's SATCOM work that translates really well. Anything with geospatial type of work if you're using the Esri products. But generally speaking, all hands-on IT jobs translate very, very well, especially if it's specific C4ISR systems. We're looking for those people all the time. But I would say where it gets less transferable is when it's less technical and more from an advisory standpoint. But yeah, it's really, we have all of those jobs, even logistics jobs, if you're heavy doing master scheduling, things of that nature. But for IT, it's really hands-on technical and have the required certifications that meet the 8570 compliance.
So, Tom, I want to kind of step in. Within my portfolio, the 8570 was predominant. That has sunset, and I own 8140, which is the new qualification. So what you're talking about is exactly right. When you're constrained for your LCATs in your contract, having qualifications, certifications, we have broken that up, and it's slow getting down to the contract arena. We've had to work through the FAR and the DFAR. For anybody that's heard, at the federal level, this is the body that governs our contracts and how they're employed. DOD has its own set that mirrors that. Specifically, we're going to change some things within the DFAR to hopefully help not just you, Tom, but the applicants out there. It's like, I'm so close, but I don't have that CSSIP or I don't have that CES Plus, yet I know how to do it. So our focus now is not just certification, but certification, education, training, both military and commercial training, and experience. So we've broken it, and it's not, you have to have both or this or that. And it's disseminating that down and making it easier on the industry side to understand what that is and what is acceptable. So I understand very clearly, and we work with a myriad of cert providers to kind of expand ways to qualify the workforce. at the end of the day, from the DOD's perspective, and this is something that industry we picked up on, is skills-based. I would like to see a point from what I'm trying to do is it doesn't matter. I don't care what you qualified or what qualifies you. Demonstration of skill. Can you do the job? And then compare that when I'm ranking candidates. So if you're working in a software company right now, although some things have changed, when you apply for a job, you don't go right into the system. You go through a series of labs. And as you progress through the labs, you are getting closer to an actual, okay, now this is a serious candidate and we're judging those skills. I'm not talking about something near as complicated, but I think that is where we're going on this front in terms of, instead of just looking at a piece of paper, these are the actual skills. How do I know? And having them demonstrate those skills and then rating that and say, we can do it. I'm running a pilot right now for skills-based hiring, and it seems kind of ironic when considering what's happening across the federal government. But I want to see, and I'm bringing in, no kidding, these guys are, in terms of cyber analysts and cyber defenders, crack, and they're going through 2 different assessment tests, and it's just like they would do on the job. And then we're going to rack and stack and use that data. And we plan on trying to apply that. So when I've got hiring managers right now that have told me, and these are tech geeks, they're like, if somebody can pass that test and they're in the top 5, they can work beside me anytime. So that's what we're kind of going at to kind of eliminate that. And then for those out there who are so frustrated, it's like, I know I can do it. I was doing it. I just don't have this, or I don't have the money to invest to go get those things right now. So it doesn't solve the problem right now, but just know from a department level how we're thinking. And I hope to partner more with industry and learn from them. That's the direction we're going.
I just want to say that I mean, that is like awesome news. So that's really, really, really cool. Yeah.
Patrick, can you share a little bit more about that pilot? Where can people go to?
The pilot right now is still in development, right? I have to build the assessments. We've done that. So working with 2, so I won't do plugs for the 2 companies that do the assessments, but they've got the lab/ranges. We've crafted those. We use work roles, but just think in terms of cybersecurity standard. If you have a CSSIP or along those lines, you would probably do pretty well in these assessments. I like to say in this field, both in IT and cyber, you can't fake the funk. You can do it or you can't do it.
Right.
And I know because they leaned it up and looked at it and they said, all right, where's the internet port? And I was like, okay, on to the next question. So that's obviously not my area. And that's what we want to kind of weed out, is that bombardment of things. So we're building it's going through the testing. Matter of fact, this week, I've got the experts going through, I'm benchmarking those results, and then I'm going to take that to leadership and see if they'll let me run with that. And then also at the same time, we're going to offer that up to OPM. So I'm going to go up at the federal level and say, this is what we believe skills-based hiring is. And the great thing about government, it's not proprietary. I will share whatever I've done, take it, copy it, steal it, call it your own. It doesn't matter. If it's effective, I want you to use it. And that's really what we try to do in my office in terms of innovation. Deliver capabilities. I can't make people use it, but deliver capabilities to enhance the overall mission. So when I get a date, if I have an opportunity, if the group is large enough, I'll let you know. We may keep it small and do 20 or 30 so we can place them. The challenge we have right now, obviously, there's a hiring freeze, how we'll plug that in. But after that, as we start to open it up, I'd be glad to share that across the board.
Okay, super. Another great question from the audience. If we're in a reduction in forces environment and the job market is saturated with many people looking to make that jump, what are some specific tips or words of advice or words of wisdom that you can offer?
So I can hop in there. Yeah, so the job market seems saturated. Absolutely. Just a little tip on that really quick. So if you're applying to jobs on LinkedIn, I think again it's a mental game, but it's important to understand this. If you're applying to jobs on LinkedIn, it's going to say 2,000 people applied. So something really important to understand about that. All that means is 2,000 people clicked the apply button. Doesn't mean 2,000 people went through the process and actually applied with the company. So a lot of times when we're looking at how many applications, are in at a job from a candidate standpoint, it's discouraging to see that number. So I would, safely say maybe that number is 20% of people that actually applied. So when you're applying to any job, you have to realize that most of the time, the person that receives that resume is a recruiter. And they're a recruiter that maybe just got out of college. They're a recruiter that, maybe they've got a little bit more experience, but essentially speaking, they don't understand what you're doing. You may have something very clear. For example, here's a stupid example, but you may be doing, engineering in Azure. And you say, I've engineered systems in Azure, whatever. A recruiter may not know that that's a cloud environment. I know that sounds absolutely ridiculous, but my point is you have to hit people over the head with your experience, and you have to make sure that you don't leave anything up for assumption in your resume, and don't expect people to read between the lines, because they absolutely won't. Part of that is due to just the knowledge level of the recruiter reading your resume, but also part of that is due to, if your resume doesn't look the part, the way hiring compliance works, we can't look at unqualified people before we look at qualified people. And the only way we tell if you're qualified is by your resume. So make your resume quantifiable, make it very clear, make sure that you have all of the skills that you've used, all of the different systems that you've worked on. If you're in a Linux environment, make sure you put Linux. If it's a version of Red Hat, make sure, you put it in there. That's how we look for people. We search based upon keywords, and some hiring managers, it's literally like, I've heard this so many times. This is a cloud engineer and it says cloud in their resume one time. And I'm like, yeah, but so that's how people think about it. It's like, how many of those keywords are in your resume? But really be specific about your experience, and quantify your resume in terms of volume of projects that you worked on. I know I'm getting long-winded, but last thing I'll say about that is, so for example, just real quickly, if you say I was a project manager of a team, it's much different than saying, I was a project manager of a team consisting of 16 employees working on a network that spanned 26 states and 30,000 users. It's way different. So any chance you have to put that type of information in your resume, and you may think this is common sense, but I look at hundreds of resumes a day, and I'll tell you it's not common sense. So definitely that's a good tip.
Okay, great. Go ahead,
Can I
Nancy.
also add? So in a saturated job market, that's where your networks, your professional networks, really will help you. So when you're looking for a position, and if it's in a company and you've seen them somewhere, or someone that works for that company, it doesn't hurt to reach out to someone and let them know that you're applying. Basically, you have to put the application in and put the resume in, but sending a personal note to someone that like that you really know, that works at that company, could give you a boost up within the pile of people applying.
Excellent point. Thank you, Nancy. And since Tom was talking about resumes, are there pros and cons to posting a resume anonymously? And Nancy, is that even something that someone could do within the AFCEA Career Center?
So the resumes that are in the resume database are all anonymous to protect the people that are applying. And if a company decides that your resumes pique their interest, they will then have to pay a small fee, and then they will be able to see your resume, and then they will contact you. But all of the resumes are in there anonymously. Okay,
great. Another great question from the audience. What are the best ways to translate IT management experience to industry?
So, it kind of goes back to my last point, right. But I will say in general, this is where people struggle big time. And on industry side, if you're a manager, right? Like if you're a project manager or a program manager, a lot of times those people don't take credit for the overall mission of the project that they are working on. And what I mean by that is they think that, like, you know, all of the team has contract deliverables or you know, whatever on the government side. You are managing those deliverables. So even if you may not be the person that is in there that is doing the work, you still manage the completion of that work. So same thing, put those technical environments that you're working in and the volume of work that you were accountable to.
There's something I want to kind of follow up with Tom and even what Nancy said. So traditional resumes and what you're going to get, and you're transitioning, say, through TAP or some of the other things, you're going to come out with a pretty long-winded set. A traditional federal resume can be up to 10 pages long, you know, going back to your time as a paper boy. That's not what industry, and really that's not what I'm looking for in a resume. So, you know, Tom stressed quantify, quantify, quantify. You are your own best advocate. This is not a time to be modest and think, well, the team really did that, I didn't do that. Lay it out, specify deliverables, specify impact, specify scope, right? Don't be shy. I'm not saying inflate or lie, because remember, in this arena, you can't fake the funk, but talk about what you actually did. And it really needs to be done in no more than 2 pages. That first page should make that recruiter or that hiring manager, the eyes light up. And I think, Nancy, you've probably got resources that can really help with that. And then on top of that, that network is key, because right now, a lot of people, if they're trying to get into the federal government, they'll apply to 400 different jobs, and they complain about that it's a black box and you don't get any word back. Your resume needs to be adaptable. Get your core story down, core aspects, because you should be applying for things that you're qualified for, and then be able to adapt rapidly that resume to the opportunities as you see them arise. Don't just do one here's my boilerplate every time. Really look at that announcement. Look at the keys. What are they asking for? What are they really looking for? Tailor and craft that. And if you can combine that with tools available, and Nancy mentioned the site or your network, you're a lot more successful. I think, Tom, you talked about it. Said 2,000 people applied. Yeah, chances are 1,500 of them aren't even qualified.
Totally.
Because they're just throwing their resume at everything they see. Yeah, I did something like that. Sure, I'll throw it in, see what happens, right? So focus on the opportunity you're trying to get, and then craft that specifically to the opportunity. You can build your boilerplate, but it needs to be adaptable so you can really tell your story.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And are there some common surprises that people discover when they're trying to make that transition?
You know, so we coined this term, the dual culture conundrum. And what this is you're working for, you know, company X, right? You get hired on the industry side. You're working for company X, and you potentially could be the only employee from company X on the base in that office with a team of other contractors and government employees. So, you know, you signed up for the culture of the company, and then you go in and you realize, well, I'm actually, you know, I see them once a month when we get donuts or whatever. So that's a big change. So, you know, what I love about this situation is, you know, collaboration in the government space, as much as like people say it's not there, it is there in spades. There's so much collaboration between companies, between the government, between, you know, there could be 5 companies working on the same contract, all working towards the same mission. So that could be a little jarring at first, especially if you're coming from that structured environment that we all talked about already, where you're used to having every step in your day laid out for you. And now it's like, hey, not only get off and running, but there's also no one from your company here in this office to work with you. So that could be a little jarring, I would say.
And it is that environment where you're there. So you're client facing, you're right there with the client. And sometimes if you are the only member, you've got to build that rapport. If you're a smaller company, the larger companies, there can be some perceived barriers. But I find if you develop that, and it goes back again to building networks, these are opportunities, really opportunities. You like your company, you're working, but there's nothing wrong with also displaying capability that others around you see that. Make those connections when you're there. You cannot just sit. People say, "Oh, I just want to do my job." That's not industry, right? It's not. You've got a widget, you pull the lever, and the widget moves, and you pull the lever again. That's not the world anymore.
Yeah, I'll add on to that too. It's like I used the term chain of command before. It is that. So, it's the difference between, following a chain of command versus like, hey, I'm in onboarding and, I don't know what to do next. Industry folks have to ask. They have to like be very, they have to own the process and own their day and make sure that they are, basically asking for, direction if it's not there, or, that just behavior of asking and being very vocal, especially transitioning military. I've heard from a lot of people that we have helped with their transition that is a very shocking moment for them, is just that lack of direct guidance all the time. And I don't want to paint the picture that everyone's out there just fighting for themselves, because that's not the case. But I'm talking about going from this like structured environment to a less structured environment. It's just a different way of working.
Okay, good. And Patrick, you had mentioned earlier the possibility of somebody leaving government to go work with industry and then maybe wanting to come back at some point. If somebody is thinking about making that jump and going to industry, but they think they really might want to be back in government at some point, is that jump to industry, should that be a concern at all? What are some of the pros and cons to doing that?
So the pros are obvious. You are going to get a broader swath of experience. It's going to benefit you. Absolutely. Being out there and competing at a different level, doing things at a different level, right, is going to benefit you, especially in terms of looking at things through an efficiency lens. How do I make the process streamlined? How do I make the process more efficient and effective for the bottom line, right? Coming back into government. Now, government isn't a business, but the business of government is still a process. So you're able to apply that. Where you may have left at basically an intermediate level, you've gained expertise. Coming back over to the government side, as you look at it, you're like, I can run that project now, or I could take that office and be a leader there. So that's the advantage. Some of the disadvantages, a lot of people on the government side, and we talked about the benefits earlier, if you remember, you feel vested. I've done 10 years or I've done 15 years, and they're thinking, well, I can't leave, I need to retire. You don't lose everything. So if you're in the competitive service and you have status, it just stops. Hopefully, we start looking at, and we've actually looked at it from a legislative point of view. That's still ongoing discussions within the department leadership. But ideally, we want to protect what you have, allow you to go out, and you should be able to come back and pick up where you left off. Right now, the system, you are penalized a bit where you go out and come back in. You don't continue to progress in certain things. But I would argue the benefit of going out into industry outweighs whether you got an additional years toward promotion or some of those other things. You're gaining valuable experience and you're coming back in generally at a different level. Very few people leave government and then come right back to what they were doing in government at the same level, at the same place. So you do lose a few things, but it's not permanent or gone. It can be turned right back on. Okay. And speaking of which, if for the DRP, I've looked at it. If you go out, if the things changed, you may decide to come back in. Nothing will preclude you from rejoining the government at a later date. Want to put that plug in.
Excellent, thank you. And I had read that a lot of state and maybe local governments are trying to recruit some federal employees in this environment. How would that be different from going to industry?
I think that transition, and Nancy, Tom, you can go ahead and interject, but it's still the business of government. They're not as concerned about the bottom line. Of course, we have a fiduciary responsibility with the taxpayers' money, and we want to employ that to the best fashion. That's the same attitude at the state or local government. It's just a different mission. It's not going to have the what I call the production drive that you would find on the commercial side, where they're like, we need to get this, we need to get the project, we're going on to the next project. So it wouldn't be as big an adjustment to go from state. If you're in the federal government and you went down to the state or to a local government, it's not going to be quite the culture shock. I think the scope and scale, you'll suddenly be stepping down a couple on the scale ladder. If you went to work for the county and you'd been working at the federal level, your problem window and problem sets are going to be much more condensed.
Okay, good. A little bit different but related question for someone who may be looking for a bit of a change, trying to work for the commercial side of the company instead of the defense side. Do you have any advice for someone interested in working for the company but not working on their DoD programs?
Yeah, I mean, the fortunate and unfortunate thing is if you've got a clearance and if you have that direct, support of government programs, industry is going to want you on their government and DoD programs. I mean, they're going to want you there. I mean, my advice, and this kind of like shoots me in the foot, would be to like take your clearance off your resume and make it look more as a traditional type of, commercial type resume, or just be very upfront in your conversations during those onboardings. But, because of how in demand the cleared market is, companies are going to want to put you into billable roles on their contracts, especially if you're cleared. So I would just say it has to do with being transparent in the process, up from the front. Say that I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for work on the commercial side, and usually a recruiter will listen. But I don't really have anything else other than that.
I have something, George.
Mm-hmm.
So AFCEA has a list on their website of all of her sustaining members, and on that list has a link to all the jobs and positions that are open on their job boards. So that's a good place if someone is looking. A lot of those are defense contractors, but if they're looking to see what other types of positions are available at those companies, they can access that list and those links and be able to look at all the different opportunities that are there. In addition to that, if say you have a friend who is not from military or government or does not have security clearance, is looking at a job, they can also tap into AFCEA's the help from AFCEA by looking at that list of companies and looking at other jobs that might not be particularly IT related, but they are working for the big companies or the sustaining members that AFCEA works with.
Okay, good. Thank you, Nancy. And Tom, you were talking about clearances, so it's a great time to bring in this audience question. How does the clearance transfer process work? How do those clearances transfer?
Yeah, so this is like the $1 million question, and I can tell you one thing, and there's going to be a million different answers. So it depends on agency and it depends on level of clearance. If you're, working in intelligence, there's not a lot of reciprocity between agencies when it comes to your polygraphs and your SCIs. Generally speaking, and this is something I think is important because it's a myth that I've seen a lot. The government owns your clearance. The government pays for your clearance. The companies do not own it. They do not pay for it. I've seen that put out there a lot, which is a little disturbing. But so your clearances are all held. If it's DoD, it's held in DIS. If it's Intel, it's held in another system called Scattered Castles. Typically speaking, from secret and top secret, those things transfer all over the place. So if you're working, over here on this Army project and want to go to this Navy project, generally speaking, it's easy. They transfer, the company just picks it up. Your SCI does not transfer. Your SCI is an access level that you are read into programs. So even if you have a current SCI, companies are looking for folks that have SCI eligibility because you'll still have to be read on. For full scopes, CI polys, they do quote unquote transfer, but it's going to take a lot longer, and it really depends on the different compartment within those agencies on if they are going to, trust the polygraph from one agency to another. So trust might not be the right way to say it, but that can be held up in reciprocity.
Okay, thank you. And Nancy, you had mentioned jobs with AFCEA as sustaining members. Do you know off the top of your head how many sustaining members we have?
it keeps changing. I think it's around 60.
Okay. Okay, I was thinking 75, but it's somewhere around in there.
Yeah.
Okay. And we have someone asking, how about DOE, Department of Energy? Anything
Yeah,
there?
I think that's in regards to clearance. Yeah. So, I mean, again, a lot of this is contract specific and contract manager specific and company specific. Generally speaking, a DOEQ translates to a DoD top secret, but it doesn't really, you can't port it over the same way that you can just port over top secret to top secret. So there's gonna have to be some investigation. And why this is important, and this goes back to like government contractors being revenue generating machines, they want to make sure that they can get you on contract quickly without having you sit for another clearance investigation. So even though DOEQ translates to DoD top secret, it's not that easy, and it really depends on the company that you're working with. But your DOEQ clearance, if you're going from DOE to support a government contractor that does DOE work, there's a couple things in there around like how long you got signed out of your last DOE clearance, but generally speaking, DOE to DOE transfers.
Something else to talk about the clearance process. There's been a massive change in the last 3 to 4 years in terms of moving clearances out of OPM over into the department. One thing to keep in mind about a clearance, you want to look at how long your investigation, all right, is valid. Be aware of that, because when you step out of your job, your clearance is turned off. It's still in the system, your investigation is still valid, and then they turn it on as needed. You take a job, if I were to take a job tomorrow that didn't require a TSSCI, they would shut my clearance off because they're not going to continue to do continuous monitoring on that. It's all about when the last time that, is my investigation still current? I have had experience bringing an employee over from the FBI. They already had a top secret clearance at the FBI. FBI have to do a polygraph. Didn't matter. Just as Tom said, there was a transition period where we had to work with the clearance office. So it's very specific to both the clearance offices, the ability to communicate. There should be, ideally, in a day world, a TS is a TS, and there should be reciprocity. We're working toward that, I think. But right now, if you make that jump, now they're going to shut the clearance off. It didn't go away. It'll have to be turned back on by the security office at the company. They'll have to put that request in and go through the government office of whatever agency you're there.
Yeah, let me tag on that. That's a really good point. And to your job search, so what I would make sure that you do too is get your clearance checked at the beginning of the process to make sure that you're not going to have an issue at offer that your clearance isn't going to transfer and all of a sudden that offer goes away, because every single offer that you get in the government contracting space will say similarly, it'll say contingent on successful transfer of clearance and completion of background investigation. So even though you have that offer, if your clearance doesn't transfer, they can't put you to work and they'll rescind the offer. So in your job hunt, when you're talking to recruiters and hiring managers, make sure everyone is crystal clear about the clearance eligibility.
Okay, and how much of a challenge is it if the different agencies are using different terminology?
Yeah, so the terminology question is interesting, and to be frank, it's more on the contractor side and just the knowledge of the process. And the biggest thing I see is around SCIs and the difference between being SCI eligible or having an active SCI. Usually when somebody says we want an active SCI, they mean we want SCI eligible people, just because you have to be re-read in anyways. But as far as secret, top secret, public trust, I mean, those are all commonly used terms that everyone understands. When you get up into access, SCI, polygraphs, that's when it gets a little murky.
Okay, good, thank you. And what are the chances that somebody posts a resume and it'll be a piece of software or an AI program that first reads that? And if that's common, what are some tactics to try to get the attention of the program so that it then gets to a live person?
Yeah, great myth. I'm loving this one. So I no matter what you read online, I promise you, AI is not rejecting your resumes. The only way your resume, so every single time software does read it, you go into an applicant tracking system, which is a recruiting system, glorified CRM. Now, there may be something in there that says, if this person says they do not have a clearance, so if you're asked a question that says, do you have an active clearance, and you put no, that's a knockout question. And yes, your resume is going to get automatically rejected because that's a qualification of the position. But as far as our AI agents out there making an assessment based upon you and making an assessment to move you forward in the process, that is not happening. The best thing I can tell you, since your resume is going into these systems, stay away from two things. One, do not put your contact information and your name in the header of the document. A lot of times that the systems just have a problem with that for some reason. And your contact information could be stripped out of your resume. And stay away from tables. So we don't care about graphics. I don't care how pretty it looks. You know, we look at like grammar and things like that, obviously. Don't put your picture on it. Like anything that the system could have a problem with, and tables is one of those things. It just, for some reason, sometimes the systems just have a problem reading tables. So yeah, don't spend a lot of time making it look great. Just focus on the content. But as far as AI bots out there, I have yet to see one, and I've been doing this a long time.
I do have a recommendation if you're worried about that. Okay, on the government side, there are some things in USA Jobs. I'll just leave it there. But it's really what Tom's talking about. It's looking for automatic disqualifiers. What you can use in terms of AI, you can actually feed your resume in and ask AI to summarize your resume, highlighting strengths, quantify it, right? Notice I didn't say have AI write it. AI can break that down. We have built a similar tool where it classifies a resume. And I can, as a hiring manager, you can look at that and say, here are your top 5. And it rapidly says, these are the strengths, positive, negative, here are the gaps. You can do that all day long, and that can really help you develop the resume. So when you put it into AI, you'll think, as Tom said, you think you're being very clear about your experience and capability, and it will come back and tell you, you got a gap there, right? You're looking for experience, project management experience for 10 years. You've got it, it's not reflected, and it will tell you it's not reflected. These are some of the things you can do on your own. I strongly encourage that. Run it through, ask it to play with it, ask it to summarize, highlight strengths. Does it have I quantified my accomplishments? It's a great tool, a great way for you to rapidly go through that, especially if you do not have a lot of people to bounce the resume off.
Okay, yeah, that's an excellent tip. Thank you for that. I think this may be our last question, unless somebody sneaks one in under the wire. We have a viewer who has an active SCI and is taking a delayed retirement starting this month, and is asking if you have any recommendations on how to begin consulting with companies or government and maintaining that SCI.
There's a whole bunch of gray area there. Like, do you have a cool off period? You know what I mean? Like, are you able to do it? If you're asking the question, I'm assuming you're able to do it. If your main concern is about your clearance remaining active and that's why you want to do consulting, that's a different story. I mean, you're going to be read out of your SCI. You're going to remain SCI eligible. You're, depending on when your last, if you're in continuous evaluation and your last investigation took place, generally speaking, you should have at least a year, 2 years to reactivate that clearance. How to consult? It goes back to what Nancy said. Like, what's your network? Like, go start talking to people in your network, and especially if you're dealing with command and control systems, or you have a very good knowledge of the way that systems are used. If that's your network, dig into it. I don't really have any other guidance other than that, but networking seems to be the best way to consult.
The other thing I can add to that is if you are going to be a consultant, it's really a great thing to do is to become an AFCEA corporate member as a consultant, where you'll be able to be put your core capabilities will be able to be put in the corporate member directory, and that directory is utilized by companies and agencies to look for different skill sets that they're looking for to hire consultants. So, and then in addition to that, we have a lot of small business committee. We have a small business committee, and we have a lot of resources there for small businesses and consultants to help grow their businesses.
Okay, that's great to know. Nancy, I think you get the last word. So Patrick, Tom, and Nancy, thank you all so much for joining us today. It was a great discussion, and we appreciate all of you being here. And thank you to our viewers for submitting questions. We always appreciate your time and participation, and we hope you found the discussion helpful. If you did ask a question that we didn't get to, our subject matter experts will try to get back to you. And as I mentioned earlier, please know that there are some resources available to you under the Resources tab. Also, you can link to the archived version of this webinar and see previous Signal webinars on AFCEA's Signal Magazine website, webinars.afcea.org. That concludes our AFCEA Solutions webinar for today. Thank you again for joining us. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Yeah.